We be live, I think. Let me check. Guys, let me know if you have my audio. Today we're going to get right into it. We're going to get to the point. This is, yes, we are live. Let me check my audio myself. You have my yes. Audio is good. Everything is good. The only thing remaining is for you guys to like the stream, because this is going to be the most to-the-point, comprehensive, complete analysis of whether or not Islam is compatible with Western Enlightenment values. So we have Mohammed Hijab here. I don't know if you guys know Mohammed Hijab, because the channel has grown recently a lot, and a lot of you are new here. This guy, let me bring him up. This guy, this is Mohammed Hijab. Nigel Farage has just recently said something regarding Muslims in the UK not believing in UK values. We will listen to what Nigel Farage has said. And Mohammed Hijab has come and responded to him and challenged him on that claim, which is a great opportunity for us to check whether or not, to see first of all what Nigel Farage has said, how Mohammed Hijab responds, and who is right. I have everything here ready. I have the most complete analysis of this claim and the counterclaim, and we will get right into it. So let's watch. Guys, make sure you're in the live chat. You tell me if you are liking the stream, because I need other people to also see that you're liking the stream. This is going to be the best reference video you could send to anybody if they're wondering whether or not Islam is compatible with values in the UK or any other country that is based on Enlightenment values. France, Germany, Spain, Canada, United States, Taiwan, Japan, South Korea. This is going to be it. This is going to be their reference video. So thank you guys for confirming that you're liking the stream so that more people see this. So let's watch this, what Mohammed Hijab is saying here. And he's going to have an ad first, so let's get through the ad.
Hey you, are you wasting your time on social media again? Your brothers and sisters in Islam Net from Norway are establishing a masjid, a da'wah center.
So masjid is a mosque, da'wah center is a place where they advertise Islam. They're raising money to spread Islam in Norway. You can see that this is spreading. The Islamic disease is spreading in Europe and North America, and these people are funding it, and it's really working. They are very effective at what they're doing, and that's what the ad is. So they're asking for donations so that they could build more Islamic centers in Norway. And I know Norway is such a great place for them to try to spread. There's a lot of money to be made there.
Establishing a masjid to convey the message of Islam is one of the best deeds a Muslim can do. There's a huge need for it in Norway. You know this and I know this. So that makes the reward even greater. So give generously and Allah Azza wa Jal will give you even more.
So he's like, give money to us and Allah will return more to you. So it's a great investment, he's saying. Like, you give money to them to build masjids or mosques in Norway and spread Islam in Norway, and whatever money you spend, you will get 10 times more in the afterlife, or 100 times more, 1,000 times more. Here's a comment. David in the live chat is saying, I mean, honestly, does any of this even matter? I think the left will destroy Europe anyways, eventually. I give the Western world this century, and then it is done for. Well, David, I completely disagree with you. Liberalism has been challenged by greater threats than this and has come surviving from the other side stronger than ever. Liberalism was fighting communism and militant Islamism. So this, this defeatist attitude is what you think the left will destroy Europe. I would say this defeatist attitude could destroy Europe. You have to fight back. If you give up, then yeah, we're screwed. If you give up, we're screwed. If you give up, but we have a fighting chance, and we're gonna guys. If you think that we have a chance and that we shouldn't let these nations, these liberal nations, these Western countries fall, if you think that we shouldn't just accept defeat, please support me here, because this attitude is exactly what we're fighting here against. Which we think that these countries, these values deserve fighting for, because we have a chance, because we will crush these. We will crush. I know it doesn't look like it, but we will crush Islam. We will crush woke left and Marxist left and Islam. We will be victorious. These values are just too strong. Liberal values are just too strong for them to be defeated by Islam.
Assalamu alaikum.
Somebody saying the other side is using violence. Will you? Yeah, of course. In response to violence, you have to use violence. Of course. What do you think Israel is doing right now? Anyways, so let's see, guys. Let's get through this video. By the way, look how he sees himself as a lion. Look at this part. This is so cringe. The beginning of his video when he puts his name on top of a lion, because he sees himself as a lion for God, a lion for Allah. Look at this. Look, he puts his name on an image of a lion. And isn't that cringe? Isn't that like, I don't know, that's so lame.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you guys doing? Right-wing proponent Nigel Farage, who was known for a single issue, which was Brexit, has now started to veer into different directions and has, for some reason, started to comment on Muslims in Britain. Let's take a look at some of the comments that he's made recently and come back and respond in kind.
We have a growing number of young people in this country who do not subscribe to British values, in fact, loathe much of what we stand for. So what do you do?
Who are we talking about there?
Oh, I think we see them on the streets of London every Saturday.
What do they look like? Oh, we're talking about...
What do they look like?
Are we talking about Muslims here?
We are. And I'm afraid I found some of the recent surveys saying that 46% of British Muslims support Hamas, support a terrorist organisation that is prescribed in this country. So we've been, and what's interesting is that this Prime Minister is building up far more of that population than anybody before in history.
Now, many things have been said by different people, proponents of media, and I've been following some of the comments of some right-wing people who have actually said, quote unquote, well, tell us what he said that is wrong. I mean, he's saying that
it's not just right-leaning people that contacted you that said, like, look at this. He said, like, so many people contacted me that said, what is he saying he's wrong? That is wrong. It's Muslims from the UK also will agree with this. Yeah, proudly so. Let's just go listen to Daniel Hagaju and so many other Muslims. Like, yeah, we do not accept UK values. And proudly so. Like, of course, Islamic values come before like your man-made laws. And again, I will show you that there's this other guy named Mohammed Hijab who agrees with that. I will show you that.
Many things have been said by different people, proponents of media, and I've been following some of the comments of some right-wing people who have actually said, quote unquote, well, tell us what he said that is wrong. I mean, he's saying that Muslims in this country, who, let's say, constitute about 7% of the country's population, that Muslims in this country, the United Kingdom, they don't respect fundamental British values, and that something needs to be done about this. And he cited, as an example, the amount of Muslims who supported the proscribed terrorist organization in the UK, Hamas.
So here, this is the poll, the study that they're talking about. 46% of UK Muslims support Hamas. Be careful. He also says support Hamas. Be mindful of the wording here. Support Hamas. It does not talking about whether they consider Hamas to be a terrorist organization or not. It's talking about them supporting Hamas. 46%. That's an insane number. There is no other group of people that have this much support for a group like Hamas that is 46% support. Like, show me another community that has even close, even remotely close, even 10% support for a group as violent as and barbaric as Hamas. So remember, he's going to switch the goalpost. He's going from supporting Hamas to recognizing it as a terrorist group. Because when it comes to terrorists, what you define as a terrorist group, there is some technical disagreements. Sometimes people think that if you say some group is not terrorist, you're saying they're good. But it's actually some technical legal jargon that is about whether a state, for example, is a group that is now a state, because it's a state, cannot, even if it's doing the most atrocious, this violent acts of barbaric acts of human rights violations, or mass genocide, rape, whatever they do, you're not endorsing them by saying that they're not a terrorist group, because technically by the definition of terrorist, there are different definitions. There's no standard definition of a terrorist group. By certain definitions of terrorist group, if you are a state, it doesn't matter how evil you are, you're no longer a terrorist group, right? So some people suggest that, okay, Hamas is evil and they're doing violent act, but technically by the definition, because they have been elected as a state, we don't recognize them as a terrorist group, but recognize them as evil, but not a terrorist group, right? So just remember that what we care about is not these legal mumbo jumbo of whether they are a terrorist group or not. What we care about is that 46% of UK Muslims are supporting this group. That's what we care about. But look how he switches the goalpost. So let's go back to him.
Now, the first question is, what are fundamental British values? Fundamental British values are 5 in number. They are the rule of law, tolerance, democracy, individual liberty, and respect. These are the 5, box.
Well, I had written this before myself. I would say UK values are basically Enlightenment values, and I had the list of Enlightenment values myself in Google Doc a long time ago. These are the things I've written. Like, he has 5, I have more than 5, but we go with his 5. But separations of powers, like when the thing that came out of Montesquieu, and then we have secularism, we have representative democracy, freedom of expression, freedom of trade, respect for fundamental human rights, property rights, respect for the scientific method, freedom of assembly, respect for rule of law, civic nationalism, individual liberty, and equality under the law. That's the bigger list that I have, but we could go with his 5. His 5 is not complete, but sure, whatever.
Standard, if you like, British values that you have in national curricula all around the country, and that are taught to students in this country. So if we ask the question, is it the case that there is something inherent about the religion of Islam or about the Muslim communities, or is there sociological evidence to suggest that those 5 aspects are in all respects rejected by the Muslim community? I would say that's actually an inaccurate statement. Let's take the first thing, democracy, for example. Democracy, by the vast majority of traditionalist Orthodox Muslim commentators and scholars, is considered to be acceptable if used instrumentally. Of course, it's not seen as an objective truth in and of itself. I mean, Plato himself had issues with democracy, and there's philosophers, even in the Western tradition, that had issues with democracy as a system.
Yeah, Plato was wrong about Plato. Plato was the first known political philosopher. I mean, technically, everything that political philosophy is doing ever since Plato was a footnote to his Republic, right? But again, that was the first attempt. Obviously, the guy got many things wrong. We don't go to Plato for when we say Western tradition. When we say this is why I say Enlightenment values or Enlightenment values in Western countries rather than Western values. We don't every single political theorist in the West is not what we endorse. We endorse only Enlightenment values. If we want to endorse everything that came out of the West, then we would technically have to support Marxism that came out of Germany, and also Nazism that also came out of Germany. Obviously, we don't support Western values. We support Enlightenment values that came out of the West. We don't support every single Western values. Why are you? This is whataboutism. Well, Islam is against democracy. Well, Plato was also against democracy. Well, screw Plato. Like, who said that because we're supporting Enlightenment values, we support every single theory that came out of the West? That is insane. Also, I will respond to every single one of these points with Mohammed Hijab himself and Quranic verses and hadith. I just want to get through this so let's remember this. We're talking about democracy. I will show you how Islam is anti-democracy. Okay, so we will get back to every single one of these points.
As an objective truth or as a pragmatic usage. So democracy, it's not actually correct to say that well, Muslims reject democracy and all the results of representative democratic processes. So I don't think we can put that aside for now. Second thing you could say is
also, as liberals, we don't believe in absolute democracy, right? And we don't believe in direct democracy, right? So the opposite of direct democracy, on the other side of direct democracy, is representative democracy. So we believe in representative democracy, not direct democracy. And we don't believe in absolute democracy. We believe in limited democracy. We believe in liberal democracy. Liberal democracy is a limited democracy, which democracy, the rule of the majority, is limited by certain, by the Constitution or anything that acts like the Constitution, which has certain limitation on what the majority can do. Namely, for example, basic human rights limits what the majority can do. So we don't believe, as liberals, we don't believe in absolute democracy. We believe in limited. But again, limited by what? That's very important, because republics are limited democracies, but some republics are limited in the wrong way. Some republics are liberal democracy, so they limit democracy based on liberal values.
Respect. There's nothing in the religion of Islam which indicates that respect is to be forgotten or is not to be.
Okay, so remember, we said first, number one, let's write these down. Democracy, we will get back to this. We will see what Islam thinks of democracy, because he says these are UK values. So if Islam is anti-democracy, according to the list of the values that we have for UK, if Islam is anti-democracy, Islam would be in contradiction with UK values. By the way, Alfred is starring some of the comments. Thank you, Alfred. I will read some of them at the end of the show. Thank you, Alfred, for starring the most important ones. So number one was democracy. Number two is respect. Okay. I mean, I'm not going to go through all the Enlightenment values that I listed. I will just go through the ones that Mohammed Hijab is listing, and I will show you why Islam is against them.
Upheld, in fact. And this is a very subjective term. What do we mean by respect? But if you're asking the question about Islam and Muslim people in particular, there's nothing there to suggest that. Number three, if you talk about tolerance, well, I mean, there are many verses in the Quran which state quite explicitly and quite candidly that people can live in whatever or using whatever system they want to use for their life.
So if respect means tolerance, let's see what Islam has to say about tolerance. We will get to this. He says, like, Islam lets you live whatever way you want to live. Okay, we'll get to that.
Worldview they want to use. For example, lakum dinukum waliya din in chapter 109 of the Quran.
So lakum dinakum waliya din. Okay, so that means to each their own religion. This is a Quranic verse. And when it says the Quranic verse says to each their own religion, a lot of Muslims try to say, look, Islam is tolerant and everybody could have their own religion. So remember, lakum dinakum waliya din. We will get back to this. Okay, there's two verses that Muslims use to try to, when they want to act like Islam is tolerant. One of them is this lakum dinakum waliya din, and the other one is la ikraha fid din. So we'll get to both of those verses, and we will give you the context.
You have your religion, we have ours. فَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيُؤْمِنْ وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيَكْفُرْ. Whoever wants to can believe, and whoever wants to can disbelieve. Or it's mentioned in chapter 2, verse 256, that لا إكراه في الدين قد تبين الرشد من الغي فما يكفر بالطاغوت ويؤمن بالله فقد استمسك بالعروة الوثقى. That there is no compulsion.
So he's also saying he also said la ikraha fi din. So lakum dinakum waliya din means to each their own religion. We'll get to that. The second one, la ikraha fi din, means there's no compulsion in religion. We will cover both of these. We will get to both of these.
In religion. This is Islam. Islam does in fact state that.
The first is like, well, other Western traditions also don't completely believe in democracy. He was saying democracy is a tool that could be used. It's not like inherently good. And we responded to that, but we will also show Quranic verses and hadiths. Then the second one was respect, and he translated respect as tolerance. And he brought these two verses to show that Islam is tolerance. So now we're going to go to liberty.
We're not meant to convert people forcibly in this way. So if we're asking,
we're not meant to convert people forcibly. We will get to force as well.
Does Islam practice tolerance? Yes. you'll say, of course, some people say, well, you guys don't actually have tolerance towards the LGBT community or this community or that community. Well, in the British context, or in the context of the Western world, there's no scholar or reputable scholar across the world in Islam that says that there shouldn't be, or there should be some kind of intolerance practiced against members of communities which we disagree with the practices of. For example,
Wow, there should be no intolerance against the people who disagree with us in the community. We'll see about that. We'll see about that. I have everything ready for you.
LGBTQ communities, etc. So I don't think there's enough evidence to suggest that on a sociological level, on a classical Islamic level, that tolerance is not upheld in Islam and or by Muslims in the United Kingdom or anywhere else in the West. What about individual liberty? Now, this is connected, obviously. Liberalism with a small L as an ideology, as something I've spoken about at length, is not something which is compatible with Islam in the broad sense. But individual liberty, if we're talking about people to choose whatever they want in the Western context, once again, there's no scholar worth his salt or her salt that would say that such a thing is, we should rebel against it in the Western context. So really and truly here, and rule of law, of course, rule of law, scholars are very explicit at the fact that you should obey the law of the land so long as it does not contradict Islamic law if you're living it. So you could...
Yeah, well, so you should obey the law of the land so as long as it doesn't contradict Islamic law. So basically, do not obey the law of the land because Enlightenment values do contradict Islamic law.
You could make the argument, actually, that fundamental British values, from one angle or from one respect, it's not something we are in opposition to from that perspective, from the pragmatic or contextual perspective. Of course, if you go deeper, you could say there are points of tension as an objective reality. So that's one thing. Then he cites, 46% of people believe, he says, 46%, Muslims believe or support Hamas. Well, I just looked at a study done by YouGov, which is seen as a reputable and credible organization that says that of the people that support Palestine in Britain as a whole, 14% of them actually supported Hamas. Now, that can't be constitutive of the entire Muslim population because there's only 7% of Muslims in the UK, which shows you that there are people who support Hamas who are not Muslims in the United Kingdom.
So his defense for why there's 46% of Muslims supporting Hamas, his first defense was, 14% of people in UK that support Palestine also support Hamas, and not all of them are Muslim. So he's doing whataboutism. So he's like, well, look, there are non-Muslims who support this terrorist, barbaric, violent group. So there you go. Like, yeah, nobody said that it was just you guys that are supporting these terrorists. I mean, you guys represent the largest group of people who support terrorists, but you're not the only one. We know there's a whole bunch of insane non-Muslim, especially from the woke left and Marxists, who support these terrorists as well. How is this a defense? Like, hey, we're not the only crazy ones. There are also other crazy people who support violent, barbaric groups. Wow, great defense. Great defense, Mohammed Hijab.
This is unusual, you could argue, because it's a proscribed terrorist organization. But suffice it for me to say, it's not a proscribed terrorist organization in the majority of the world. I mean, Hamas is not, this is a fact. Majority of countries do not consider them to be a proscribed terrorist. In fact, Switzerland...
Yeah, so now he's switching the goalpost. He's saying, well, majority of the countries in the world does not consider them to be a terrorist group. Yeah, but that goes into the legal mumbo jumbo of whether or not a state could be a terrorist group or not. That's a different point to the fact that you support them. You support them. See, he's changing the discussion. He's like, well, the majority of the countries of the world do not categorize Hamas as a terrorist group. That's because some technicality with regards to what's the definition of a terrorist group. Can a group that is now a state of a group of people be categorized as a terrorist group? This is why, for example, the government in Iran, they're not referred as a terrorist group, even though they're supporting terrorism. They call them a state sponsor of terror, because they're a state. So a state cannot be a terrorist group, even though if they're evil, even though if they're supporting terrorism. So that's the point. That's the problem with Hamas. But again, you could base, and there's no set definition for what the terrorist group is. But that is beside the point. The main point is that they're evil, that they're committing genocide. They kill children, they kill civilians, and 46% of your community supports them. Don't distract us from this crazy number by like, okay, well, other people don't categorize them as a terrorist group. That's a different point. That's a different argument. By the way, any definition that doesn't categorize Hamas as a terrorist group, I think is failing as a definition. I think we need to look into these definitions and change them, because Hamas should, but if the word terrorist group should have any utility, if it doesn't include Hamas, then we have a problem with these definitions. The utility of this definition is very low if it doesn't include Hamas.
For the longest of time. And Norway for the longest of time. These are European countries, did not consider them to be terrorist organizations. I think they may have changed that recently. But the point is, just because something is seen as a proscribed terrorist organization, it doesn't mean to...
See how the excuses, like this is an insane number. 46% of the community supporting Hamas. That's an insane number. Look at the gymnastic arguments and the distractions that he has to go and the whataboutism that he has to do to take away attention from this fact, from this insane fact.
Say that the people who support that group are necessarily against fundamental British values, the like of which we've just mentioned. It's actually conceived.
Oh yeah, people who support a group of people that is committing genocide and is RAPing women and killing children. If you support that, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're against the fundamental British values. Sure.
Believable that someone could make a case for Hamas as a non-proscribed terrorist organization, which many have, and still claim at least to uphold fundamental British values. That's the first thing. The second point, which is very important, is that the same tensions which may exist with the dominant ethic of the West and Islam could also said to be existing within Judaism and the dominant ethic of the West, which is, say, liberalism.
Somebody in the chat is saying, I'm sure hijab has got a split personality. Well, it's funny that you say that, because after I show this video from Mohammed Hijab, I am going to show you some videos from Mohammed Hijab that goes against everything he's saying here. So you met Mohammed Hijab. Now, once this is finished, almost a few more seconds over, finished, and then we will go back and I will introduce you to another side of Mohammed Hijab. Because before I go to Quranic verses and hadiths to respond to Mohammed Hijab, I will use Mohammed Hijab's own words to respond to Mohammed Hijab.
Classical liberalism. So if you wanted to make a case about Muslims because of lack of integration, say, or opposition to what you consider to be fundamental British values and or the dominant ethic of the West, then you could say the same thing about Orthodox Jews. And this is something that Abdullah Andalusi recently came on.
Yeah, I mean, we do say that about Orthodox Jews. That's why to save Israel, you know, a lot of liberals of Israel are protesting against the ultra-Orthodox Jewish people and their influence in politics in Israel. We do say that about ultra-Orthodox Jewish people. That's why Israel has just recently been successful to make the draft more fair, to not use religious privilege for the ultra-Orthodox Jews, that all Israelis are all contributing and defending Israel, and ultra-Orthodox Jewish people in Israel are using their religion to not have to fight like everyone else. And now that exemption, that privilege is taken away from them because liberalism is winning over ultra-Orthodox Judaism in Israel. Hopefully they will win other battles. So yeah, we are consistent with this.
GB News and done a fantastic job in being able to expound on in great detail. And you can see his video in the link below. And that is enough of a sober analysis for us to say, I'm sorry to say, Farage, you have not been able to make the case in a strong enough manner. And to specialize this, to make it a remarkable case of the Muslim community and peculiarize and otherize the Muslim community above and beyond.
Somebody, Arthur is saying it's not, Armin, unfortunately. I mean, yes, in general, we're losing the battle to Orthodox Jewish people in Israel. But I was talking about that specific win. I was celebrating that specific recent win. Okay, we have to celebrate what we can get. I wasn't talking about the general trend.
Is enough of a sober analysis for us to say, I'm sorry to say, Farage, you have not been able to make the case in a strong enough manner. And to specialize this, to make it a remarkable case of the Muslim community and peculiarize and otherize the Muslim community above and beyond other communities like the Jewish community or other communities, even maybe the Sikh community, Orthodox Sikh communities, and other maybe even evangelical Christian communities within the West, I think speaks volumes about your...
Yeah, but okay, so yeah, they also have within the religion values and tradition that contradicts enlightenment and liberal values, but not as much as you guys, not as much as Islam. And Islam, it's its own different monster. Islam challenges liberalism. Islam, I mean, and the far left, wokeism and Marxism, are a much greater danger to liberal and enlightenment values than these other religions. Yes, they contradict. They have teachings that contradict, but I will show you why your ideology is a lot more dangerous.
Disingenuity, and it speaks volumes about how you perceive Muslims in this country, and it may even speak volumes about maybe who could be, and this may be a question I should ask you, is paying you, who's paying you to speak like this? Because
let's, guys, we were almost finishing this video without an anti-Jewish stereotype. Okay, so I'm glad Mohammed Hijab just managed to shove in the anti-Semitism in the last few seconds of the video, just so that we have that covered as well, for this video to be a complete analysis of everything wrong with these people, right? So I'm thankful to Mohammed Hijab for making sure that he includes that at the very end. Oh, who's paying you, Farage? Is it possibly the Jews? Is it the Jews that are paying you? The Zionists are paying you, huh? Nigel Farage, everything we don't like has been funded by the Jews, apparently. Let's see. Is it the Jews?
In this country, and it may even speak volumes about maybe who could be, and this may be a question I should ask you, is paying you, who's paying you to speak like this? Because back in the days, you and...
Are you going to say who's paying them? Or are you just going to suggest that the Jews are paying him without actually mentioning them at all? Or are you going to mention them? Let's see.
Robinson and others used to all have this very patriotic, pro-Britain approach. And it seems to me the balance is changing, isn't it, Nigel? Now it seems to me that you're more concerned with Israel and foreign politics than you are with national...
Oh, okay, there you go. No, they actually mentioned my name. Why are you more concerned with Israel? Okay, so yeah, they're mentioned by name. It is the Jews that are paying you, apparently. Okay, YouTube, not what I'm saying. This is what Mohammed Hijab is saying. I'm just making fun of it.
Politics of Great Britain. That's what I will say. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Your brothers and sisters.
Okay, so this is another ad for spreading Islam in Norway. But guys, so this was, interesting. But let's now see what Mohammed Hijab has to say. I will show you a couple of videos, and I will tell you why these are relevant to what we are discussing. Okay, so you saw Mohammed Hijab. Now let's listen to Mohammed Hijab, okay?
They think life begins. For us, we believe that death begins. We believe that life begins at death. We don't care about death. We love death. And if you think that our people in Palestine or across the Arab and Muslim world will let go of the struggle and our sacred places like Al-Aqsa.
All right, so that was key. So he says, for us, life begins at death. We love death, right? And I've shown this video a couple of times on this channel, and I will also show you the Quranic verses and hadith. But to show you that this comes from Islam, this teaching, what Mohammed Hijab is saying, is the most dangerous part of Islam. I know a lot of you think that the cutting of the hands, the crucifying people who are challenging Islam, the killing of unbelievers, the killing of LGBT people, the fighting against non-believers, all of that part, you know, the torture of people who commit zina, those are the most problematic parts of Islam, and those verses and those hadiths are constantly mentioned to warn people about Islam. But I'm telling you, and I will always give you the arguments for why all of that is nothing compared to this part of Islam and how important and how problematic this part of Islam is. The fact that this life does not matter, it's the afterlife that matters. This life, this world is called dunya. The afterlife is called the akhirah. And everything you do needs to be for the akhirah, because this life is temporary and that life is infinite. And this is what makes Islam a death cult. And this is the most dangerous part of Islam, because it basically completely changes the priorities of an individual and a society. So I could show you how Islam is anti-democratic. I could show you how, and I will show you how Islam is anti-democratic or intolerant or anti-liberty, the opposite of what Mohammed Hijab said. But a religion that teaches you that life begins at death cannot, even if I don't have example verses, even if I don't have specific examples of hadith and Quran that will show you that by itself shows you that Islam cannot be in line with Western Enlightenment values. Why? Because the whole point, the entire reason for Enlightenment values is to improve life, is to increase prosperity, is to increase well-being. The whole point of Enlightenment values is for improving the dunya. No ideology can be in line with Enlightenment values if it teaches you that life does not matter. It's what comes after death that matters. Any ideology that shifts your priorities in such a dramatic way is a death cult. Everything else that we have that is problematic about Islam is rooted in this teaching. Because everything else about Islam makes sense if this is true. The problem with Islam is not that it's nonsense. The problem with Islam is that it actually makes sense if you accept this foundational understanding of how the world works. The terrorism, the violence, the execution of people like me that are apostates. It all makes sense. It all logically follows if what Mohammed Hijab is saying here is true. So keep that in mind. But it gets worse. So it's a death cult. So let me give it to you in 3 stages. It's a death cult, and that's the first layer. The second layer is that it's expansionist, that it wants to destroy everything that is not Islamic and make it Islamic. So, and the third part is that it has the fact that it's focused on death and the afterlife makes demonstrating your deterring capabilities against it less effective. And these are the 3 parts that I will show you with Mohammed Hijab's own words that shows you what a dangerous ideology Islam is. Because if it was just the first part, let's say it was a death cult that was just isolationist and it was just a few people focusing on the afterlife and they were not minding their own business, but they thought the afterlife was more important, but it was just themselves. But it's not just a death cult. It's a death cult that wants to take over the world. So it's a virus that is spreading that is viral. That is going, spreads like wildfire. But also the third part breaks this. It completes the destructive nature of Islam. The third part is the fact that you can't deter it in the same way that you could deter other groups of people, because it's a death cult. So here's the first video. Let's go to the second part that shows you how it spreads, because it has an expansionist attitude. Look at this. So remember what Mohammed Hijab said earlier. Mohammed Hijab was saying that there's no contradiction between Islam and UK values. So UK values, apparently, I think, care about life. UK values are there to enhance people's lives. Mohammed Hijab tells you that they don't care about life. They care about life. For them, life begins at death. So now here's the second video by Mohammed Hijab. Oh, by the way, special thanks to Harris Sultan for sending me these videos. I reached out to him and he had these ready for me and he sent them to me. So I just want to make sure that I give him credit for cutting these videos and having them ready for me. So thank you. So listen to this.
If you look at the central figure of Islam, which is Muhammad, right? He went through a war, or a variety of wars, a series of wars, and at the end of it, he was victorious. And that's historically attested to. I mean, there's no controversy on that issue. And that's why Islam spread and so on. So Islam is a warrior religion in many ways, and it's unapologetically so. It's about expansion, it's about conquest and so on.
So it's about expansion. Okay, so here's one part, and here's the second video confirming that.
Reason why you have to fight them is because they are Jews and Christians. You should fight those empires around you, or those hukumat around you, which are Jew or Christian, until they give the jizya. That's fine. That we already know Islam allows. And then the howness of that is in the hadith. The three options that they're given. Either
the three options is for you to either submit to Islamic law, give the jizya, pay the money, or become Muslim yourself, or die. Okay, or actually leave this place.
You give the jizya, or you do this, or you do that.
Okay, so look at, he says, you give the jizya, or you do this, or you do that. So the do that part is die. Like he didn't mention, like he didn't say, like the third option is die.
That. Yeah, we're not.
Why doesn't he not mention? Why does he say you give the jizya, or you do this, or you do that? Why didn't you mention all the three options? Why didn't you mention all? Why do you, from all the three options? Why did you mention what the other two are?
Options that they're given. Either you give the jizya, or you do this, or you do that. Yeah, we're not apologetic about that point.
It's amazing that one of the three options is dying. You're like, hey, you have the option to just be killed by us. Do you want that option?
That is true. Your religion has to have an expansionist element. So then, therefore, there is no situation or conceivability of peace being made between Muslims and non-Muslims.
Islam is a warrior religion.
Very
you have
tolerant.
to fight them is because options that.
Look at this part. Let's go back to this part. This was really. Remember how he was saying Islam is so tolerant? Listen to this part again.
True. Your religion has to have an expansionist element. So then, therefore, there is no situation or conceivability of peace being made between Muslims and non-Muslims.
Islam is a warrior religion in many ways, and it's unapologetically so. It's about expansion. It's about conquest.
All right, so that's the second layer. Remember, the first layer was that it focuses on death. It's a death cult. The second part is that it's trying to expand by force, and it does that effectively. But now the third part, which makes it complete, is now that we want to fight back against this virus. It's hard to fight back. Like if you are fighting against communism or Nazism, the point is that the soldiers in those ideologies, they care about life as well. So when you fight back against them, there are ways to deter them. There are ways that you could take things away from them that will make them submit, that will make them surrender. But the third part of Islam that goes back to focus on death makes fighting against it very difficult. So let's look at this last video. So let's look at what he's saying. Mohammed Hijab is saying here. Dude, isn't it great that I have Mohammed Hijab videos to respond to Mohammed Hijab before I go to the Quranic verses and hadith?
Allah says in the Quran, is there any respite for us, or is there any result for us except for the two good things?
So Muslims, they only have two good options. Either they will crush you in war and win, or you will kill them and they will win because they were martyrs and go to heaven. So it says we will win either way. We will win in either way because if they die in war, again, it's a death cult. They want that. They for them life begins at death, and they go to the best part of heaven because they died in war. So either way, they're winning. That makes it more difficult for you to defeat this virus because dying doesn't deter them. Losing their children, losing their homes doesn't deter them because this is life. This is dunya. This is temporary.
Two good things, either victory or shahada.
Shahada
How
means
can you
martyrdom.
lose? They are the biggest winners in the world today are the people in Gaza. Because they're in between two things, victory and martyrdom.
Imagine how destructive of an ideology this is for the people in Gaza. This is why Islam is responsible for all the hardship of people in Gaza. Imagine looking at what's happening in Gaza and teaching the world that they are the best, they are in the best situation. This is why people in Gaza are suffering, because they have encouraged them to be in such a position, because they're fighting an unwinnable battle, but they think that they're winning. They're welcoming all this hardship upon them because people like Mohammed Hijab is encouraging them and giving them false hope. And some of the people in Gaza are now the worst off, some of the worst off people in the world. But according to Islam and according to Mohammed Hijab, they're actually it's the best place to be, and the best people to be right now is in Gaza, and to be one of the people of Gaza. This is how bizarre this ideology is, and this is why people in Gaza are suffering, right? So let's go to the Quranic verses and hadith to confirm everything that we heard here is actually consistent with Islamic teaching. So we said, is Islam democratic? So a lot of Muslim scholars will argue, well, no, we are not democratic, because the Quran, so this is Quran chapter 5 verse 44, and says, whoever does not judge by what Allah has revealed, then it is those who are the disbelievers. So the Quran says that our judgment is based on God's law, based on Allah's law, not by man-made law. There are many Quranic verses that poo-poos any laws or standards that is man-made, and it says laws and standards come from Allah. So democracy is ruled by the people. Islam says we don't rule by the people, we rule by what Allah has said. The Sharia, which means Islamic law, is Allah's law. The only time that you have a shura or have a council of Muslims coming together and deciding something is for things that Allah and the Sunnah, which means the way of the Prophet, has not commented on. That shura, that council, is what so many Muslims try to refer to act like Islam is democratic. But those are only for things that there's no Quranic verse and no hadith and no Sunnah on. But and here's some news for you. They have commented on a lot. They have left very few things up for humans to decide. So basically, if you have democracy, which is the shura or the council that Muslims have, it has Allah, the Quran. If you read the Quran and all the entirety of hadith, there's very little things that democratic council, which has, well, actually it's not even democratic, but let's say it is, that council gets to, the wiggle room is very, very small, because Quran, they brag about the Quran and the hadith being so complete that has commented on almost everything, right? They even comment about how to wash the cum off of your clothes if cum gets in your clothes after sex, right? So they have covered everything. The Sharia covers everything. So yeah, if the Shura wants to comment on something, it has to be for the very few things left. Okay, so that's democracy. What was the next one? Oh, respect. So let's go to respect. But Mohammed Hijab said, well, Islam is respectful and tolerant, right? We have a Quranic verse here for you guys that says, this is Quran chapter 5, verse 51. It says, "O you who have believed," meaning the mu'mineen, meaning the believers, "do not take the Jews and Christians as allies. They are in fact allies of one another. And whoever is an ally to them among you, then indeed he is one of them. Indeed, Allah guides not the wrongdoing people." All right, so that was very tolerant of Christians and Jews. And here's a very tolerant hadith. And again, this is Sahih hadith, Sahih Muslim. People who know their Islam, they know that when Sahih Muslim and Sahih Bukhari are the most authentic and authoritative and fundamental part of Sunni Islamic teaching, and this is inseparable from Islam. This is second only to the Quran teaching. Most Sharia mostly comes from the Hadith. Most of Sharia doesn't come from the Quran; it comes from Hadith. And this is Sahih Muslim, which is one of the two main sources of Hadith in Sunni Islam is Sahih Muslim and Sahih Bukhari. So let's see what this one says. It says the last hour will not come unless the Muslims will fight against the Jews, and the Muslims will kill them until the Jews would hide themselves behind a stone or a tree, and a stone or a tree would say, Muslim or the servant of Allah, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him. But the qarqat tree would not say, for it is the tree of the Jews. So basically this hadith is saying that the last day, basically the day of judgment, will not come before the end of days. What will happen is that Muslims will be hunting down Jews. Again, YouTube, not my words. I'm telling people about the problematic teachings in the hadith. I do not endorse this. So Muslims will be hunting down Jews and trying to kill them, and the Jews will be hiding behind rocks and trees, but there would be an Islamic miracle. A beautiful Islamic miracle will happen, and the trees and the stones will shout out, like, Muslims, come, there's a Jew hiding behind me, come kill him. But there's one tree that will not betray the Jews. It's a qarqad tree. It's a Jew tree. And that tree will not betray the Jews. But it's a bad tree, basically. But the other trees will betray will give away their hiding places. And yeah. So very tolerant, very, very respectful, obviously. What is this one? Oh, okay. So we wanted to go to liberty. Let's do liberty. Again, for it comes to intolerance to Jews and Christians and other people, I have so many examples, but those are the examples that I like to go to. I like to go one from the Quran and one from the Hadith, just to cover everything. Yeah, so this one. All right, so we're going to go to liberty. So let's do two on liberty, because we were doing liberty. So I picked this verse. I mean, again, my hands were full. If I wanted to do everything that contradicted UK values from the Quran and Hadith, we would be here for like 10 hours, right? But I picked this one for chapter 33, verse 36 of the Quran. It says, guys, please like this video. I worked hard for this stream, okay? Please like this stream so that more people end up seeing this, okay? So this verse is saying, it is not for a believing man or a believing woman when Allah and his messengers have decided a matter that they should thereafter have any choice about their affair. And whoever disobeys Allah and his messenger has certainly strayed into clear error. So basically, when Allah and his messengers have decided on something, then shut the hell up. Do not disagree with them. You have no choice. I'm glad that they're actually using the word that they should, says should have thereafter any choice about their affair. So it is not for believing men to have any choice after Allah and his messenger have decided something. So yeah, not very, when it comes to liberty, when a command comes from Allah and his messenger, that's about it. Just shut up. There's no room for disagreement. That contradicts liberty. These are the values that Muhammad Hijab listed. I didn't even list them. Muhammad Hijab listed them. Let's go to this other verse. Again, I just wanted to give you a verse that the broad sense being anti-liberty, and another verse from the Quran that is specifically one case of being anti-liberty, just to cover like a broad and narrow, cover them both. So I picked chapter 24, verse 2 of the Quran, saying, the unmarried woman or unmarried man found guilty of sexual intercourse, lash each one of them with 100 lashes. And do not be taken by pity for them in their religion of Allah, meaning Islam. If you should believe in Allah and the last day, if you believe in Allah and the last day, do not pity them when you're lashing them. And let a group of believers witness their punishment. Okay, so make sure you watch them being lashed because they had sexual intercourse out of marriage. And also while you're watching them, make sure you have no pity. All right, so yeah, liberty, no, maybe not liberty to be able to choose your own sexual partners. That is not allowed. Okay, so let's go to the verse that Muhammad Hijab mentioned himself. You can see here it says lakum dinakum waliyadin, which means for you is your religion and for me is my religion. So a lot of people don't understand the context of this verse. You know, they keep saying you take it out of context, you take it out of context, but we have studied the context. When I give you the interpretation of these verses, is with this, with the, I provide, you know, in many of my streams before, when I had the time to break down these verses, which I will do in the future as well, I provide you the context, and the context make them worse. But again, when they want to make Islam look good, they are the ones who ignore the context, because this verse was given in a context when Muhammad was trying to separate himself. When he says lakum dinakum waliya din, he was not talking about choice. He was not talking about, well, you could choose your religion, we could choose ours. He was separating himself. He was basically saying from them. He was telling the infidels, the kafirun, the unbelievers to Islam, that you are separate from us. Like, that's your religion, this is our religion. He was drawing a line of separation. He was not talking about choice, that it's okay for you to choose another religion. He was not saying that that's okay, that you are not Muslim. And I have my evidence for that in another verse. So people say like, oh, lakum dinakum waliya din. Islam teaches you that anybody could have their own religion. Well, according to the Quran, you're wrong. This is chapter 3, verse 85, okay, that says, and whoever desires other than Islam as religion, never will it be accepted from him. And he in the hereafter will be among the losers. Okay, so no, if you choose anything other than Islam, never will it be accepted from him. All right, so lakum dinakum waliya din apparently doesn't mean that everybody could basically pick their own religion, because it will not be accepted from you. Let's go to the other verse that, how much time do we have? Let's go to the other verse that Muhammad Hijab mentioned. You can see this beginning part. It says, La ikraha fid din, which means there's no compulsion in the acceptance of religion. And technically, that is true, because you could don't pick Islam and die. Dying is the choice. Well, I mean, if you're Ahlul Kitab, if you're people of the book, if you're Jew or Christian, you have more choices. You could submit and humble yourself and pay the jizya, and accept Islamic law. So when it says la ikraha fid din, meaning there's no compulsion in religion, for Jews and Christians, they have three choices. They could either convert to Islam, they could submit and pay the jizya and remain Jew or Christian, or they could die. Dying is also an option. Technically, they could also leave the Islamic land, but the whole goal is to eventually make the whole world Islamic, so that third option is not there for you. However, this is the interesting part. When you, as a Jew or Christian, if you remain a Jew or Christian, you still have to accept Islamic law. So you could remain a Jew or Christian, but you have to obey Islamic law. So you don't have to accept Islam as a religion, but you have to submit to Islam, right? So that part is important. However, non-Jews and non-Christians, like atheists like myself, or Buddhists, or Hindus, or deists, or anything else, they don't have that option. They have to die, right? According, like, they could, or become Muslim. They could convert to Islam or die. So they don't have the option to keep their religion and pay the jizya. That's only for the people of the book, which is Jews and Christians, right? And also, another important part about this verse is that this verse was given at a time where Muhammad in Medina had very low forces, and he didn't have the power to force Islam upon the people and everyone else, because eventually, when he did have the upper hand, when he, with his giant army, came to Mecca, he basically said Islam or else. He forced Islam in Mecca once he had actually the upper hand, when he had the force. And again, I'm not making any of this up. If you think that it says la ikraha din means there's no compulsion in religion, so meaning that, okay, so Islam doesn't force you to be or remain Muslim, if you think that verse is teaching that, well, I introduce you this guy named Prophet Muhammad. Okay, let's see what he said. This is against Sahih Bukhari, which is, as I mentioned, one of the two main sources of Islamic hadith, which is second only to the Quran, accepted by all four Islamic Sunni school of thought. So again, I have all the sources on the screen showing for people who doubt what I'm saying. Muhammad said, the blood of a Muslim who confesses that none has the right to be worshipped but Allah, and that I am his apostle, cannot be shed except in 3 cases: in qisas for murder, a married person who commits illegal sexual intercourse, and the one who reverts from Islam, apostate, and leaves the Muslims, right? So Muhammad here is saying there's only 3 cases that you could kill somebody who is or was a Muslim. So basically, when it comes to killing non-Muslims, your hand is open. You have a lot less limitations there. But when it comes to Muslims themselves, you have to be very careful. Muhammad says that you could only kill 3. There's only 3 cases where you could kill people, right? So it says when he says the blood of a Muslim who confesses that the right to be worshipped but Allah and I am as opposed to, basically whoever accepts Allah as the only one who's the right who should be worshipped, and Muhammad being his prophet, that makes him a Muslim, right? So whoever has done that, there's only 3 cases that you could kill them. It's qisas. So for example, if they kill somebody, you could kill them, or actually the qisas is so barbaric and evil. Maybe I should do a stream on it on one day because it's so unfair the way they do it. So that's one. For somebody who has committed illegal sexual intercourse, you could kill them as well, apparently, and in Islam. But the third one is interesting. The apostate, whoever was a Muslim, that basically me, I get a mention, me. It's okay. Basically, Islam is telling you that it's okay to kill me because I was a Muslim and I now left Islam. By the way, this hadith that Muhammad is saying that killing people who have left Islam is okay and should be done. This is not the only hadith. This has been repeated multiple times in many Sahih hadiths in Bukhari and Muslim. So this is not just Sahih, but also Mutawatir. So this is an inseparable part of the Islamic teaching. And yeah, so there's no compulsion in religion, but if you leave Islam, we have to kill you, according to Muhammad himself. So no compulsion at all, apparently. So remember, when they say la ikraha fi din, remember to show them these other teachings of the Quran. All right, so when I said Islam is a death cult, and Muhammad Hijab was saying that, life begins at death, we love death. I just wanted to make sure that this is not just Muhammad Hijab saying this. This is the Quran that says all this. This is the Quran that makes Islam a death cult. So this is chapter 6, verse 32. It says, and the worldly life is not but amusement and diversion, but the home of the hereafter is best for those who fear Allah. So will you not reason? Oh, will you not reason? I didn't know this was Yoda. Okay, so this one, and this worldly life is not but diversion and amusement. So this is Quran chapter 29, verse 64, and some verses after. So, and this worldly life is not but diversion and amusement, and indeed, the home of the hereafter, that is the eternal life, if only they knew. Okay, so let's go to this one. Okay, so this is chapter 87, verse 16. It says, but you prefer the worldly life. Oh, so it's actually a couple of verses, verse 16 and 17. So Allah is saying, but you prefer the worldly life, while the hereafter is better and more enduring, right? So again, this by itself shows that Islam, these 2 verses by itself, it shows that Islam could never be in support of Western Enlightenment values, because Islam dismisses life and celebrates death. It celebrates another shadowy, imaginary world for you to be working on and investing on, while the whole point of Enlightenment values is to enhance and improve this worldly life. And this is so important, guys. This is so important for you to recognize. I know this is not as juicy, as interesting, and Islam telling you to go kill the infidels. I know that gets a lot more clicks and attention, but this is the most important part. The reason is that even if this was the only thing that the Quran teaches, it will make it a very dangerous ideology. The reason for that is this worldly life that the Quran is dismissing is all we have. This is all we have. This is the entire point of fighting. This is the entire point of us struggling. This is what we are. This is why we do everything that we do. An ideology that wants to take away your worldly life is an ideology that wants to take everything from you. This is everything. Okay, so that was the Islam being a death cult. Now Islam being expansionist, trying to expand, trying to destroy everything that is not Islam. We go to chapter 8, verse 39 of the Quran, saying, and fight against them until there is no fitna, meaning division, and until the religion, all for it is for Allah. And if they cease, then indeed Allah is seeing of what they do. So basically, this Quranic verse is saying, fight them until all religions. So if anybody who says that, oh, this is just in context of a certain battle at that time, it's not talking about now. It was talking about that war at that time. No, this Quranic verse is saying, fight until all of it, all religion is for Allah. Basically, it's Islam or else. The whole point is to expand until you capture the entire planet, okay? And even if other planets. And then this one shows, fight against those who do not believe in Allah, against people who say, oh, this was about only that specific battle and that specific case and that specific situation. You have to read it in context. It's not talking about all unbelievers. Well, it's identifying the people you need to fight as those who do not believe in Allah. It's not talking about, oh, those people in this battle. It doesn't specify that. It's very clear, especially a Quranic. The Quran itself claims that it's a guidance for all men at all time. So when it's telling you to fight the non-believers, it's identifying the enemy as the people who do not believe in Allah, right? Or in the last day, and who do not consider unlawful what Allah and His messengers have made unlawful. So basically, you have to fight the people who don't believe in Sharia. When it says who do not consider unlawful what Allah and His messengers have made unlawful, this is Islamic law. They have to fight whoever does not believe in Islamic law, and who do not adopt the religion of truth, meaning Islam, from those who were given the scripture. Oh, so this is the condition. So people, there's a limitation. So basically saying that if people who haven't received the scripture, so you see, this is not about a specific war at a specific time. He's saying all the people in the world, as long as they have received the scripture, then they should become Muslim, or you should be fighting them. Or unless they pay the jizya, and if you humble them, so willingly while they are humble. So until they give the jizya willingly while they are humbled, you have to humble them, right? So a lot of people try to use this part of the verse to see like, oh, actually, look, there's some limitations on violence. But actually, this is your own undoing, because this verse shows you that this is not about a specific battle. This part of the verse shows that this is talking about all people. You shouldn't fight people if they have not received the scripture, so they haven't heard about Islam. But again, I've heard scholars argue that in this day and age, with the internet, everybody has access to the Quran, so there's no excuse left for anybody. This is actually the context that you have to take this is that Islam was more limited before, because back then you could have some tribes that, oh, well, we never received the Quran, so we can't fight that. We had never a chance to become Muslim. So in fact, Islam has less limitations on violence today because everybody has access to the Quran via the internet, so there's no excuses left. And here's another verse showing you the expansionist attitude of Islam. Chapter 9, verse 29 of the Quran. Fight against those who do not believe in Allah or in the last day and who do not consider unlawful. Basically the same thing. Oh, actually, that's the same thing. Let me actually go and see. Wow, there's so many comments that have been. Oh, we got a super chat. Thank you, super sticker by Singapore Auditor. Thank you so much for the super chat from Singapore. I appreciate that. Guys, make sure to like the stream. I need you guys to like the stream because that is the only way YouTube will recommend this stream to as many people as it can. Your liking will boost the algorithm and more people will end up seeing this. So let me actually quickly respond to the people in the chat. And let me see. Oh, I had a chat summary. I don't know where did that go. All right. So Rutuj is saying, hi, Armin. Years ago, I was lefty lunatic who thought you were just an Islamophobic bigot. Then I actually took out the time to watch your videos. And now, thanks to people like you, I am a better person. Amazing. Thank you so much for telling. Guys, see, what we do here can have an effect. And thank you, Rutuj. Thank you so much for telling me. You have no idea how much energy and enthusiasm you've given me. This is giving me a lot more motivation to do what I'm doing. I really appreciate you saying that. Thank you. Wow. I'm just so happy right now. Guys, give us a like just for that. Thank you. Idris, thank you so much for your comment saying, I am not a traditional Muslim. So Idris is a Muslim, but not a traditional one, he says. My theology is very different from Orthodox Islam. I believe that God is goodness. So if an atheist is a supporter of goodness, then in my opinion, he is also Muslim. Well, Idris, you are not a Muslim. You are a good person, and your views contradict Islamic teaching. Okay, this is you are a good person, so you made up your own version of Islam because actual Islam is so barbaric and evil that you could not accept a religion that has those teachings. So because you could not get rid of Islam because you're so attached to Islam, you had to go make up your own personal religion, which is Idrisism, right? You made up Idrisism because you want your religion to reflect your kind nature, and you are pretending that this is Islam, and it's not Islam. But I salute you for being a kind person who could not accept Islamic teaching. You're a good person. You're a kind person. But again, this is just a fantasy. This is just make believe that this is Islam. Your attachment issues with the word Muslim and Islam made it so that you cannot get rid of Islam. So you have to pretend that this ideology that you made up is actually Islam. But thank you. David saying, I mean, honestly, does any of this even matter? Oh yeah, I already read this at the beginning of the show. And David, for people who weren't at the beginning of the show, David was saying, I mean, honestly, does any of this even matter? I think the left will destroy Europe anyways. Eventually, I give the Western world this century, and then it is done for. I have a lot more hope for the Western world. This is just like we're just down a little bit, but we're up in so many different other ways. Guys, let me know if there's a demand for me to show you how we are going to succeed anyways. Like, here's the problem with defeating liberalism. Liberalism works so effectively that is good for business. Okay, and if your ideas are good for business, it is really hard to defeat you. Okay, sometimes it might seem like you're being defeated, but over the long run, the ideas that are so effective that they're good for everything, including the economy, when you have business on your side, you will have money on your side, and when you have money on your side, when you have wealth on your side, you will become more powerful. When you become more powerful, you will be able to destroy your enemies. This is why I'm hopeful for liberalism. There are temporary periods of time again, and also we have to believe that we could win this, because if we don't, then we will lose. And you saw there were comments before me were saying that they were lunatic leftists, and now they're liberal instead of a leftist. David is continues saying, Armin, there is a difference between fighting a communist or Islamic regime versus 2 billion people supported by Western leftists. Well, actually, no, because communism was not just in Soviet Russia, the Soviet Union, or China. Communism was also an ideology that was very effective. It seemed very appealing. Like the message that it was spreading was very effective at fooling a lot of people. It wasn't just an enemy that you were fighting, beyond your borders. Communism was in Europe. Communism was spreading in the United States. It was in the universities. It was in the media. It was everywhere. So it is very similar to Islam in many aspects. Like it was a mind virus that was spreading like wildfire. But here's the thing: it's also self-defeat. This is why we will eventually win, because they are so barbaric and so insane and so backward that they will destroy themselves. Right? This is why we will eventually win, because liberalism saves itself, it makes itself stronger. Communism, Islam, and wokeism, it eats itself. That's why we will eventually win. Communism was a very effective mind virus that was spreading just the same way Islam is spreading. But eventually, people saw, if you looked at the world, you saw what capitalism brought you, and you saw what communism brought you, and people chose. If you focus on this is why focusing on the dunya will make the best ideas win, because people see that way of life. I'm like, I choose that. I want to choose life. I want to choose prosperity. I want to choose higher well-being. I want to choose a higher standard of living for my children. That's what I want to choose. Because again, as much as Islam is a powerful mind virus, it's not going to be able to destroy every Muslim's humanity. Muslims' humanity will overcome the mind virus of Islam. This is why I think that we shouldn't be fighting Muslims, we should be fighting Islam. Because every Muslim, their humanity within Muslims, if you want to defeat Islam, you should fight for the humanity within Muslims to overcome the Islamic mind virus. You cannot fight Muslims, because fighting with Muslims against Islam in their mind is our only hope. That's why we cannot dismiss reaching out to Muslims. Okay, so Kelvin is saying, Armin, the most dangerous Islamists are not ISIS or Al-Qaeda. I completely agree with that. The most dangerous Islamists or Muslims are the reformists. Let me see. I haven't read the second part of your sentence, but Al-Qaeda and ISIS are not the most dangerous Muslims who are spreading the Islamic mind virus. It's the reformists, the liberal, moderate Muslims who are pretending that this is their way of thinking is in line with Islam. Those are the most dangerous spreader of this virus. Let me see the second part of your sentence, if you are identifying the correct. The most dangerous one are stealth Islamists who hijacked Western institutions that posed cultural threats. Well, yeah, close, but I would say the one I identified is the most dangerous. Again, thank you so much, Singaporean Auditor, for the super chat. I really appreciate that. Okay. And then we have D saying they can't lose, win, or paradise. Yes. But again, that Islam cannot lose if it was effective at completely, because Muslims are not robots. Muslims is not like, oh, here's the Islamic code, and now their mind works completely based on Islam. Muslims are humans. Islam has different degrees of influence on their mind. And the humanity of Muslims will never be, for most Muslims, their humanity will never completely be eaten by Islam, right? So the fact is that Islam tries to make Muslims only care about death rather than life. But unfortunately for Islam, the vast majority of Muslims will end up caring about life. It's very hard for you to be a mother and look at your child. It's very rare for Muslims. You have to have very rare situations, like in Gaza, for example. Most Muslims want a high standard of living for their children. Most Muslims care about life. Most Muslims, the Quran is not going to effectively make them not care about life. And that's our end. That's our end. The fact that Muslims care about life and the fact that liberalism gives you a better life, that's our way in to try to defeat the Islamic virus in the Muslim mind. Kevin is saying UK Labour won, France leftist won, so more Islam will pumping. Yeah, okay. That means that we have to fight harder. Okay, do not give up. Do not have this defeatist attitude. We have to be fighting harder. It's our job to be holding the line. Guys, join me in holding this line. Hold the line. Do not run away. Hold the line. Oh my God. Kenny, thank you so much for the €3 super sticker. And then we have another super chat. Carl saying Islam thrives on violence and tribalism and victimhood and so many other things you didn't identify. It's not just that. It's not just violence and tribalism. It's so many things that Islam thrives on. Islam thrives on the destruction of the lives of Muslims. Unfortunately for Muslims, this is why the main victims of Islam are Muslims. So sadly, the society in the West turns more tribal and violent every day. Society in the West more. Actually, I would say, it's human mind is tribal. We have to accept the human mind the way it is, and instead of trying to deny the human mind for its tribalistic needs, we have to try to figure out how to satisfy that tribalistic need in the least harmful way possible. So, yeah, because trying to get rid of tribalism from the human mind is kind of like the communist goal of trying to remove greed from the human mind. You have to deal with humans the way they are. All right, so thank you for the super chat, Carl. And then we have another super chat from HD Drake. Last super chat from HD Drake saying, Armin, have you thought of writing a book on Islam like the Atheist Handbook to the Old Testament? By Dr. Josh Bowen. Yes, I have. I am going to write a book on Islam. I've already written a book on God. Link to it in the free, and it's available for free. Link in the description. So you could get my book about why there is no God. It's free, it's a bestseller on Amazon, but I make it available for free in the description of my YouTube video. So go check that out. And yes, I'm eventually going to write a book on Islam as well. And thank you for the super chat. Okay, guys, don't forget to share this video. I need you to share this video. This was such a complete explanation of why Islam is incompatible with Enlightenment Western values. This is the reference video, okay? The reference video. I need you to like the stream. I need you to leave a comment after the show is over to boost the algorithm so more people see it. And I need you to share it to as many people as possible. I need you to share it with your friends and enemies. However, do not share this video if it's dangerous for you. If you live in an Islamic community and sharing this video could get you in trouble, please do not share this video. Also, please do not support us financially if you are struggling financially. What are you thinking? Take care of yourself before you take care of other people. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, and I will see you on the next stream. Bye-bye.